This is Rowan Howard. I'm talking to Jim Steele. We're here at my house at 51 2nd Street, and the date is March 23rd, 1984. Jim, we've been looking at pictures of the Fall River boats and the Fall River line. Can you tell me what you remember about
Yes, I spent quite part of my youth there working on the docks. And the line itself ran for 90 consecutive years, from 1847 to 1937. And then they had the strike and discontinued.
What was the strike all about? Was it?
It was something about the workers, the longshoremen.
Yeah.
They wanted more money, and they gave them a little more money, and then they struck again, and finally the line got tired of it, and one night they just discontinued. The Fall River line was no more.
Oh, wasn't there something about the workers wanting to come back, and they?
Yes, when one night everybody was ready to board the ship at Fall River. All the passengers were turned down because they made the announcement that the line was to be discontinued. And the next day the strikers tried to negotiate. They wanted the jobs back, but that was it. 1937.
And then they brought the ships down here, and
they brought the ships down here and sold the accessories. That is the bedding and the stateroom keys and the bathroom fixtures, some of which were gold. And then the ships were towed away down to Baltimore, where they were scrapped for junk. But some of the ships, not the Fall River line ships, but some of the smaller vessels that ran to the Cape were taken into war service. Some of them went to the Pacific.
Did they? Yeah. That's interesting. When the ships were running, the people up the summer colony would ride them.
Oh yes. Sunday nights, it seemed that everybody in the avenue went to New York, and the ships themselves were quite elaborate. They had a big dining room, something like you'd find in a big hotel, and they had an orchestra, and they paid for dancing. And the ships were fairly long, I think 400 or 500 feet long, and they had staterooms, maybe 300 or 400 staterooms on each ship. And that was the way to go to New York in those days, because it's just like going home and going to bed and waking up in the city.
That's nice.
They left, the ship would leave Newport at 9:25 in the evening, and 9 hours later they docked down at Pier 14, Fulton Street, New York.
Did you ride it?
I rode it once, yes, yeah, very, very good.
Were you a small boy when you did it?
No, I was about 17, yes.
Yeah. Pretty exciting, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, yeah.
And then coming back, they would hit Newport in the middle of the night, didn't they?
Well, coming back, they leave New York about 5 o'clock and getting to Newport at 2:30 in the morning.
But you didn't have to get off.
Well, some people would go to Fall River, so their sleep wouldn't be interrupted, and then come back to Newport by bus. But a great many did get off at Newport.
Black of night, wasn't it?
It certainly was.
Did the Rolls Royces and whatnot come down and meet the summer colony? In the
Yes, they did. Of course, this was mostly the Avenue people didn't do much traveling in the wintertime. They probably were elsewhere.
What about maintenance on the ships?
Well, where the Newport shipyard is now located, they had a repair shop assembly, and they employed about maybe 300 or 400 Newporters, and some Newporters spent their whole lives working there. Machine shops, carpenters, upholsterers.
Did a lot of the people who worked there, did they live on the point too?
Quite a few did, yes. Quite a few people lived on the point.
So it must have been a big upheaval down here when they all lost their jobs.
Yes, yeah, 1937. It was because in those days there was no unemployment. You just were out of a job and had to fend for yourself as best you could.
Did you work for the yard?
I worked on the dock. I worked as a freight clerk for the New Haven Railroad. Now, the steamship company was a subsidiary of the railroad. And I worked like 6 hours for the railroad and 2 hours for the boat. That's how they worked.
Yeah. And when the boat was no more, then did you just keep on working 6 hours for the railroad?
No, I worked 8 hours. I worked.
Then.
In fact, I retired from the railroad 10 years ago.
Was it running until 10 years ago?
The railroad, just about 10 years ago, yeah. 1959, I think, a little more than 10 years ago. It's the freight stopped coming to Newport, I think 1961. But in 1959, what hurt the railroad, we had the Newport Bridge, and we did a hell of a business. I was an agent then, and I did maybe $500,000 worth of business during the 2 years that the bridge. People were using the dock down here, and they brought in all kinds of steel for about 2 years. And then after that, the bottom fell out, and there was no business, so they closed the station.
I didn't realize that it kept going that long. Yeah.
Well, you see, they lost so many accounts, like Standard Wholesale, and then after the war, of course, the Navy was nothing like it was, and they weren't getting cars for the Navy. And automobiles were coming over the road, so all that business took something away from the railroad.
Sure. Did you work for the railroad all your life?
Yes, I worked 34 years down there.
Gee,
yeah, I started when I was in high school. I used to work nights.
You did?
And when I finished up, I was the agent down there.
Great. Did you grow up here too?
In Newport, yes.
Yeah. Down here on the point?
On the point, when I was a youngster, I lived on the 86th 3rd. That's near Maitland Court.
Yeah.
An old house.
It's on the west side.
Yeah, west side, yeah.
This thing rings for somebody else because we've got the same frequency.
Oh, yeah.
And it will stop, so. You were talking the other day about a trolley that came down 3rd Street and...
A trolley went from Washington Square, through Farewell Street, over Walnut Street Bridge, up to 3rd Street, down Training Station Road to Gate 1.
Okay, and then coming back?
Coming back?
Same way?
Same way. Well, one car would leave the square, and another car would leave at the same time Gate 1. And they had a double track between Maitland Court and Vanzant Avenue, and whichever car arrived first would go off on the siding so the other car could pass.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we used to ride those cars when we were
Did
kids.
you?
Oh, they'd be like,
Yeah.
you know how youngsters are. We'd sit around the corner of Vanzant Avenue on a little fence there. And like on a cold night, if the car wasn't busy, the conductor would say, "Come on, take a ride." We'd go back to Gate 1, back to the square, and kill an hour.
Oh, nice. That's good.
Stay out of the cold, yeah.
Sure. Right. Good. That's great. And then did it connect with another trolley line somewhere?
No, that was that line from Washington Square to Gate 1. And of course, they had lines to Fall River. And lines on the Mount Hope, the Mount Hope Bridge wasn't built then, but they'd take a ferry, the car would go to the ferry that would cross over to Mount Hope, and then...
In Bristol.
Yeah, and then another car would pick up the people.
Take them to Providence.
Yes, taking them to Providence. Then they had a car that went to Fall River, but that went out West Main Road.
Yeah.
It crossed over behind Union Street. I think someone told me that some of the tracks are still there.
Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Union Street's the one that runs along behind the, sort of on the side of the valley.
Yes, yeah. Just before you get to Lawton's Valley, you turn right.
Yeah.
That's Union Street.
That's great.
Goes from West Main Road to East Main Road.
When you were a little boy, did you play down on Van Zandt Pier? No?
Oh, Van Zandt Pier, yes. And Hunter Playfield, before it was officially a playfield. We'd have to chase the cows away sometimes to get in the baseball game.
Oh.
But I think around in the early 30s, the woman who owned it, Miss Ann Hunter, gave it to the city for a playground.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's great. Talking about the other day. Oh, First Beach, Easton's Beach.
Oh, yeah, it was something, yeah. It was a miniature Coney Island.
Yeah. And they had a big dining room or a big,
big dining room, convention hall. That was it. They had the dining room in the corner, the convention hall, big dance hall, roller coaster, merry-go-round, in various little shops, penny arcades where you go in and look at the machines. And then they had a saltwater swimming pool that was used quite a lot, regulation pool. And every once in a while they'd have some well-known swimmers come down or divers to give exhibitions.
Oh.
It was quite a place.
And all that disappeared in the hurricane.
The streetcar went to the Easton Beach too. And, have you ever seen that streetcar book? I'll give it to Jack.
What about Newport?
Oh, yeah. And my God, it was busy.
Was it?
Yeah. Well, one line would come up from Commercial Wharf. That's where the Fedway is now. Because at that time, a great many people from Providence came to Newport on a boat, the steamer Mount Hope that went to. They had two steamers when I was a youth. One was the steamer Mount Hope, came from Providence, dropped people at Newport, and then went to Block Island.
Oh.
And then they had another rival company, the Newshoreham Company. Their boat came down and dropped people at Newport and went to Block Island. There were that many. Yeah, people.
How about, wasn't there a Wickford boat too? A Wickford?
There was a Wickford boat. Let me see what was her function. Oh, the Wickford boat went to Wickford and met a New York train, a train coming from New York. No, let me see. It was something to do with, I'm not quite sure about that. But it's, I don't know what the devil that did. But it met a train there, I don't know. And it docked down where the Four Line boats came in, docked on the side. And I don't know just what.
I think it had something to do with a New York connection. I'm not too sure about it either, but I know there was one.
Yes, that seems to me.
It's the way to get across the.
Yeah, I just wondered why would they do that? Because they had the Forever line to go to New York, but it seems to me it left here at 5 o'clock in the evening and went to Wickford. Maybe some people just
maybe it picked up a train to Boston or something.
Could be that, yeah. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with that line, but I know it did dock down at the south end of Long Wharf.
Jim, were you here during Prohibition? Must have been.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Do you have any memories about that time?
No, I don't seem to know too much about that.
Were you all too young for this?
Well, no, I wasn't too young. I was born in 1912, so.
Yeah.
And that was, Prohibition went up to, I guess, 1932, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, there must have been rum running and.
Oh yeah, I've heard people mention it, but we didn't go very far from the point. When we were kids, we'd go down. We went to the movies, but we hung around the piers and on the playfield.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess there was quite a lot of rum running in those days. fast boats and Coast Guard people chasing.
Yeah, that's right. People stashing their whiskey around. Any speakeasies down here that you know of, or home brew places?
Only in residences. There was one on Vicksburg Place. A man used to make home brew, and he had quite a few customers.
That's sure. Yes. I couldn't get any real stuff.
You know, they called it rat cut.
They did, yeah. How about World War II, Jim? What do you remember about Newport then?
It seemed everybody who wasn't in the Army or Navy worked over at the Torpedo Station during World War II. They worked around the clock, 3 shifts, 6 days a week. And it was completely blacked out. The windows were painted black. And
what they do about getting the boats, the ferries back and forth with no lights?
well, they had to have lights on the ferries, but very subdued.
Yeah.
And they had 2 ferries, one from the government landing and one from Briggs's Wharf.
Where's Briggs Wharf?
That's Briggs Wharf is where the causeway is now. The causeway that goes to go down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, is that government property too?
It was government property, yes. There was a little naval base down there during World War II that extended from what is now the shipyard up to what encompassed what is now Storer Park.
Yeah.
Newport section base, and they had about maybe 300 or 400 people down there.
Did they? What were they doing?
Mostly they were training,
Yeah.
and they had a fleet of small boats that would go out to ships if ships came in during the war, because most of the ships during the war didn't have, they were stripped down for action. They didn't have hardly any facility for coming ashore.
Oh.
And they had 50-foot motor launches down at the section base, and they'd go out and meet the ships. And they also had a shore patrol unit down there.
Yeah. But that was busy.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. Well, the Torpedo Station must have hired a lot more people during the war than
they did, yes.
Otherwise.
And a great many people came over here and came to work there, and some of them remained here. Others left.
Yeah.
They came from Providence and Boston.
And when it was all over, and the war was over, and the Torpedo Station shut down, then what?
Most of them, if they didn't have the longevity, they were just out of a job.
Yeah.
And I know people, a couple of people lived on Walnut Street, next, where Dot Manuel lived.
Yes.
And the family, I forget his name, he took his crowd and he left. He had about 8 years and couldn't find a job. He went back to his hometown. I suppose that happened to a great many of them.
Yeah, so it's a bad time. Well, then did it just sit empty, Jim? Was there nothing going on the island until the redevelopment people took it over?
They had a sea rescue unit over there for a while. Just one thing, if some Navy ship got in trouble, they'd go out and see what they could do.
Yeah.
And after that, there was nothing there until it was torn down.
And then redeveloped. You've got a picture, one of your pictures is the lighthouse at the end with the building.
Or the green light,
The green light. When did that go down? Was that hurricane?
No, this was here in the 20s. Because they had a lighthouse keeper and his family.
Uh-huh.
And then it became automatic, and they took down the residential quarters.
Too bad. It looks nice with the lighthouse itself, doesn't it? I mean, the quarters attached to it. Was there one on Rose Island then, too?
Yes.
Did somebody live out there?
the Coast Guards ran the Rose Island light, and they had two men there up until about, well, just before they built the bridge. They don't, with the bridge, they don't need that, didn't need that light.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And that's what we're trying to save now, isn't it, that
Yes.
lighthouse? Yeah.
Sure. Hope we can. Do you think the Depression had a big effect on people down here? Did your friends and all lose their jobs, or?
Well, I think it did, but it's nothing like today. I don't remember the homeless or the bread lines in Newport during the Depression. Nowadays, you've probably read in the paper that they feed these people every day, and they house them in the YMCA. But I can't remember anyone who was starving in the Depression. People out of work. I don't know how they got. There was no government help in those days, but they seemed to get by.
Well, there was I don't know, sort of neighbor support,
Probably,
family
yeah.
support, I think. How about the jazz festivals? Did they affect you in any way?
No.
Do you have any thoughts about the jazz
No, I
festivals?
didn't go. They had a big riot. I guess you probably went around here when they were down in Privy Park. They had a hell of a big riot.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, I wasn't through that.
It was quite a. It seems that everybody was getting chased out of town. And a friend of mine lived out on the, I don't know, out around the 2 Mile corner, and he tried to go. They kept him going out of town. He finally, about 10 miles out, he met a Portsmouth policeman whom he knew, and he explained it to him. The fellow got sent him back again. Yeah, even the Newporters weren't allowed to go home. These National Guardsmen, they wouldn't know Mrs. Howard or Mrs. Steele.
Right,
Get
yeah.
out, get going. Well, I live here. Get going. Get. Yeah.
I hadn't heard that at all. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
I tell you, was that Mr. Drogas who died? The fellow who rowed the boat.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Drogas, he had a little rowboat with the Greek flag on it. You might have seen him down here.
Yeah.
And he lived around the 2 Mile corner, and he was about Mount Hope Bridge before he got permission to return. Yeah.
Oh, poor fellow. Well, that was quite a bad time, I think. For that. How about America's Cup? Jim, you got any thoughts on America's Cup?
No, not too much. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't keep it forever, but
Well, I guess.
I think it's gone now, don't you?
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have to recapture. We've got to go over to the other side of the world and fight those waters.
And we have to be the yacht club that wins it to get it back here.
Yes, yeah, because there's a lot of competition on the West Coast.
That's right. You're here in the hurricane.
Yes, I was here in the hurricane. I was down at the end of Long Wharf at the old freight office, and we had a little freight in the warehouse, and we had to prop it up on stilts so it wouldn't get wet. And the water at that time rose to about 4 feet. And there was another thing I noticed that could have been very dangerous. The roof of the freight house was of slate, and I could see those slates whipping out like knives, but fortunately nobody whipping out into the ocean, but there were no boats around, so nobody got hurt. But I think they might have cut your head off.
Talk about flying missiles. Yeah.
And then there was a big freight boat, the Preponic Borderline freight boat. And that broke away from its moorings. Yeah. It was tied on the north side of the freight office dock. It drifted out into the current broadside, and it hit the roadway that connected the lighthouse to the rest of Goat Island.
Yeah.
And now that that roadway was full of granite blocks, probably weighing half a ton apiece. And then the force of the tide sent the boat right through that stone barrier. And then the boat drifted up towards the War College, but not under control, nobody's in it. And it stayed there for a while, then it drifted to Goat Island and stayed there until it was burned to the hull. It was a wooden boat.
Oh.
Now you can imagine the force of that.
Imagine that, yes.
Because that roadway wasn't rebuilt until the hotel people took over. You might have seen it from the...
Yes, that's right.
It was quite a thing, though.
And you stayed on Long Wharf through all of this?
The storm receded about 4 o'clock, and that was it. We just left. But walking up Washington Street, we were almost knee-deep in water. And passing Elder Street Pier, you could see that the wooden structure nearest the shore was floating out into the harbor, and the end of the pier remained.
Oh, interesting.
And then we went over to Van Zandt Avenue, a couple of friends and myself, and we watched the Van Zandt Avenue pier get lifted right up, the wooden structure, and it was carried by the winds into the Naval Hospital Pier, which at that time was a wooden pier with a wooden shed on the end.
Mm-hmm.
And both piers were demolished. Yeah, that's
terrifying.
Yeah.
But you could walk.
Yes, you could walk. Yeah. But when the tide changed, the water just went down to nothing. But when I went by Elm Street Piers, 3rd Street, Washington Street, it was up to my knees. And then it trickled down Elm Street and Bridge Street, and Mars Street, because there's a grade there. And the Mars Street people and the Elm Street people near 3rd Street got quite a lot of water.
Yeah, it's quite low there, isn't it? Yeah. Was the 54 hurricane anything like that?
No, we got a lot of water now, but we didn't get the destruction. On what is now Marlborough Street, American Cup Avenue, near the fire station, the water was deep enough. I saw a couple of boys rowing a boat.
Did you?
And that was over in an hour. The tide swept everything out. That wasn't quite as bad. Easton Beach suffered terribly in the first hurricane, 1937.
Yes.
Because that was when the beach was like a miniature Coney Island and wood, and everything swept over into the big pond.
You said something the other day about there being so much salt in the big pond from that they... They drained all the water out, every bit of it. They had 100 pumps to get the water out. Isn't that something? They use that pond, the water in the pond isn't used for anything, is it, or is it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Is that not a drinking water, is it?
It certainly is, yeah.
Oh, boy. Well, then they had to get the, saw that.
And I just wondered that it must have taken quite a long while to refill.
Yes.
Because the only way to refill it would be through the rainwater, and also, directly it goes back to rainwater. They could fill it. Now what they do today, when they get a good storm, they get a good runoff. Now there's what's that brook? Bailey's Brook. It goes right under goes in the Green End Pond. And with a good rain, of course, that rushes in there, and they send it into Green End Pond. And then, now evidently, when they had to drain that pond, they must have filled it that way. Brady's Brook, it was a good storm, it's like a turret, goes into Green End Pond, and then they open the gate and send it into Easton's Pond, or the big pond.
Mm.
Because if they didn't have that, the rain itself would take years to fill, wouldn't it?
Sure would.
Mm.
Did it? Yeah. Right.
They must have done it that way.
Well, is part of our water come from Green End too, or just
Yeah.
Easton's Green End and Easton's
Yeah,
Pond, and
Green
then
End.
the reservoir over in Middletown too?
Lawton's Valley. Well, Lawton's Valley, they serve the Navy in most of Middletown.
Mhm.
We serve Newport.
Okay. But do they use the reservoir over by Third Beach? Is that part of our water system? or not?
That's a surplus, yeah. There's Paradise Pond and then Gardner's Pond.
Uh-huh.
And now if we're awfully low in the big pond,
Yeah.
that's our main source. We're piped from Paradise Pond, and we can pipe that water into the Green End Pond, and then if necessary we can send it across to the big pond. Now quite often when we have a drought we have to do that. We have to use Paradise Pond. And in an extreme drought we have to use Nonquit. That's over by Tiverton Four Corners. We have a big reservoir there, and we pump the water under the Secundit River, and that goes into St. Mary's Pond, which is a feeder for Lawton's Valley.
Yeah.
And that's quite a job too. It's very expensive, but I think we didn't have to do it this year.
Very dicey arrangement, considering the number of people that are moving into Newport and the need we're going to have for water.
Yeah, with all these new developments,
That's right. Come to the end of this one.
We're called the Pointers.
Yeah.
That's my age group. And we very seldom went downtown. We go over to the naval base. Of course, there was no security then. They'd let you on.
That's right.
Sometimes we'd go to the galleon, and some nice man would give us a feed. And then we went to the football games where they had a very good football team. And we'd go to Barracks B for boxing. They had boxing bouts with, like, for instance, the Newport versus Great Lakes. And then they had basketball. And we had a great time over there. And other times when the weather permitted, we'd hang around Hunter Field by the Van Zandt Bridge and play ball down there. And of course, we spend our summers at Van Zandt Pier. And we, once in a while, we go downtown to the Beecher Theater.
Oh, where was the Beecher?
The Beecher Theater was just south of Mary Street on Thames. And they had these chapter plays where you'd go every Saturday, and then it would be continued next week, so we didn't dare miss the next Saturday.
That's right, yeah.
And it cost us 11 cents at the time.
Oh, wonderful.
And then we'd take, sometimes good weather, we'd take a hike out the railroad tracks. You could walk all the way to Lawton's Valley in those days because there were no Navy installations like there are today.
Oh.
And in this shopping center, J.C. Penney's, that was called Rabbit Hill, and we'd go camping there. And you could pick blueberries and blackberries. It was a great, great old place.
Oh, lovely.
And that's how we spent most of the time. But we very seldom rented downtown unless we had a place to go.
Was it very rough downtown? I
No,
guess not
no,
that,
we just,
not
when
then,
we were
was
really
it?
young, we just,
No.
no, it wasn't rough. I mean, there were no muggings and the people, you could walk, hell, a little boy could walk all night and nobody bothered him in those days. It was quite a, we just didn't have the desire to leave the point, I guess. We had everything we needed, or we thought we had everything we needed.
Did you fish too?
We fished, yeah, we'd go to fish off Van Zandt Pier and sometimes freshwater fishing in the Green End Pond or the Easton's Pond.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'd take our lunches and spend the day in Jamestown because it was almost rural in those days. You'd take the ferry over and take a walk up to Taylor's Point, which is right under the bridge now. And that was a nice area for blackberries and for swimming. And a lot of older people used to go over in their boats and spend the day there.
Oh.
It was quite interesting. We found things to do here.
Oh, sure. Did you have a little rowboat or something?
I had a rowboat, yes. I rowed since I was 15 years old. And on a calm day, I'd row to Jamestown and back.
You what?
Yeah. In fact, I still have a little boat that I flew around with it outboard more, yeah. And we had a great time.
How about Rose Island? Did you go rowing out there? Did swimming use Rose Island much? No.
Not until recently, because it was government. The government had it until 1950, and then they gave it up. Since 50, I've gone over a few times each year. Now the Benson family, they love it over there. They picnic almost every Sunday. The brothers and the sisters and the children. It's a great place for picnic.
Oh, it's a marvelous island. Yeah.
And you can go up to the top of the lighthouse. I've gone up there and taken pictures of the island.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
It is interesting. Well, I hope we can preserve it.
I hope so.
How do you feel about the development?
I think it's overdeveloped. I mean, of course, being an old-time Newport, I liked it the way it was, really.
Yeah.
Where you go down Plain Street and always find a wharf to go down to the waterfront. Now you can't see the waterfront.
And too much traffic, too many people.
Oh yeah, too much traffic. And if they get this thing over here, what are they going to do with it?
On Rose Island, that would be awful overdevelopment, it seems to me.
Well, these people have taken a strong stand against. I can't remember the name of the woman who seems to be in charge.
Charlotte Johnson, I think. Yeah.
More power to her.
Yeah, you bet.
They raised some money, and of course the Bensons they'll do their best to stop this madness.
Sure. A lot of swimming. Do you remember the state of the bay when you were little? Was it, seems to me, I remember a lot of grapefruit and things thrown over the side of the ships, you know, but do you remember it clean or dirty or?
Well, I
really?
think in my time, probably your time too, they used to dump the swill. They had what they call a swill scow. And they dump all every night it'd go out and dump, I don't know just how far, but just beyond probably beyond Fort Adams. And some of that grapefruit would come back here with the tide.
Yes.
Yeah. I watched them one time pour all that swill into, tons of it. And I think that's why we found it in the shore all the time.
Sure.
And,
they didn't take it really very out to sea, did they?
And then, of course, we had our little fleet in every summer. Not too many, but you remember the destroyers they grouped in groups of 4, different can buoys. Yeah. There might be 12 or 15 ships in, and I suppose they dropped that grapefruit. So
yeah, sure. I'm sure they did. Grapefruit and everything else too. Yeah. Somehow we weren't considering the state of pollution.
No, we didn't think much about it. You never heard the word environment in those days.
Yeah. What about Blue Rocks? What's this Blue Rocks Yacht Club that I keep hearing about? Is that one?
Let me see who made that up about it. Harold Petropoulos made that up.
He did.
Yeah. And in fact, I have a scroll, or I had one, indicating that I was the Commodore of the Blue Yacht. Blue. I wish I could find it. Maybe I can if I get out of the jacket.
Yes, sure.
And it was printed, very that old English style, Let it be known that James G. Steele Jr. Yeah. Yeah. Harold, that devil Harold did that.
Yeah.
And he got Eccles so worked up, I showed it to Eccles. And he went down to, showed it to Harold. He said, "What does this mean?"
Oh, that's lovely. So you're a real hummer.
Yeah. A real hummer.
Your parents, were they born here too?
No, my mother's born in Sweden.
Oh, really?
The reason she came here, her brothers and her father were craftsmen in furniture.
Uh-huh.
And there was a big furniture company named George Vernon in Newport.
Right.
And they made all this fine furniture for the millionaires.
Uh-huh.
And he had to be very careful of whom he selected to do the work.
Yeah.
And he went all the way to Sweden to pick my father and my grandfather and my mother's brother.
For heaven's sake.
So the whole family
Really?
came back. Yeah, that's how they got to Newport.
Oh, so interesting. Yeah. Your father, he was not Swedish?
No, my father was, his father was English, his mother Irish.
Oh.
And his father worked in Fort Allen when he was young.
Oh.
But they were in this country for years and years, much longer than what was my mother.
Yeah, sure. Did any of that woodworking talent go down past it? No, what a shame, Jim.
I guess that's a thing of the past. So this fellow would make furniture for the breakers, it must have been a damn good dollar for him. Yeah, George E. Vernon.
Yeah.
And he was very careful. He found out that these people in the Nordic countries seemed to do a lot of that business.
Uh-huh.
So that's an act of fate, how I got here. My mother, I might have been a Swede.
Yes, you could have very well have been a Swede. That's right. That's right. Do you have brothers and sisters too?
I have, one of my sisters died. She was 60, younger than I am, and she died about 4 years ago. And then my other sister is married to a man named Taylor. You might remember that the boy who was drowned over here. Her son was drowned about 5 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes,
yeah,
I
28
do.
years old.
That's right. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was a terrible thing. He was studying to be a priest. He went out to Catholic University, and he went to another college in Connecticut. Nice boy, and he was slightly epileptic, but it was one of those things. He'd row all day. He'd row with Mr. Drogas, and if he had a slight spell, but he'd get over it. But he went fishing under the causeway, standing up in the boat, and everybody was proud of and he slipped over, and nobody noticed it. And they saw the empty boat. Yeah, that was a terrible thing. It was quite a shock to my sister.
Oh, awful,
Yeah. But, he didn't bother me. He worked and everything between semesters. And he rowed all day, but if he passed out for 3 or 4 seconds, that was it. But he's standing in the boat, and there's an empty boat there. Nobody noticed it. And then someone said, "Well, it's Tabor, I think, someone who knows him." He's gone. And, I think Brian Arnold dived over for him. He came over later, young Brian, I think he found him around the pilings down there.
Yeah. Shame. Is that her only child?
No, she has, Martin Brothers store, Jack's married to one of her daughters. Yeah. And then her other daughter is married to a chap named Spooner who's in computers. They're well off. Then she has another daughter, Beth. If you ever go in the parking lot at Lee, she's a tall girl. She works there sometimes.
Oh, yeah,
but she's in the fashion. She worked for Rod and Taylor in Boston.
Did she?
Yeah, but she quit being all kids out. I don't know, she didn't get a raise quick enough. My sister never died. She's doing nothing now. Imagine that. She's been there about a year. She went to a school where 2 years in Boston where you learn that business.
Yeah.
The damn kid.
And then now she's doing nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that?
Yeah. She wanted to get ahead too rapidly. You know, some of these kids today.
Well, they're very impatient.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, that's right. Huh.
Well,
I thank you very,
okay, and I
very
enjoyed
much.
being here.
I enjoyed
And,
having you.
I'll bring you up
Jack.
something else too. But,
Okay.
Yeah, and,
All right.
and they can do what they want with them. And I'll bring in a negative for this from personal
I
file.
would like that very much.